Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath with Forbes Breaking News. Hurricane Milton has quickly intensified into a Category 5 storm, and it threatens a part of Florida that is still recovering from Hurricane Helene. Debris is still on the ground in parts of Tampa and needs to be cleared out before this hurricane makes landfall. Joining us now to talk about it all is Alex DaSilva. He's AccuWeather's lead hurricane expert. Alex, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's talk about Milton. Where is it right now and where's it going?
Yeah, well, right now, Milton is located down here in the Bay of Campeche, just northwest of the Yucatan Peninsula. We have seen explosive development here over the last 24 hours or so. In fact, it is one of the fastest developing, fastest strengthening storms we've ever seen in the Atlantic. It's only comparable to Wilma and Felix. Those are the other two storms that have rapidly intensified at this pace. And so if the storm continues to intensify, it could potentially be near the top of the list here in terms of fastest intensifying storms. So certainly a history maker here so far with Milton.
Why is it intensifying so quickly? I thought I saw a report that it was just a Category 2 earlier this morning. What's going on here?
Yeah, the storm has exploded, and one of the reasons has been the sea surface temperatures. I mean, you can see this. The entire area, especially where the storm is, middle 80s. Now, typically, tropical systems need about 80 degrees Fahrenheit or so to survive and thrive, but you can see here we have temperatures several degrees above that, and it's not only about the sea surface temperatures, it's about the water with depth. We call that ocean heat content. So essentially, we measure how deep into the ocean these temperatures extend, and across the Gulf of Mexico for this time of the year, we are at record-breaking levels for both sea surface temperatures and ocean heat content. And in fact, where the storm is now, and especially where it's going, the 80-degree temperature line extends 200 to 300, even a little more than 300 feet down below the surface of the ocean. So that is one of the main reasons we've seen this intensify so quickly. And the second kind of big reason we've seen this intensify has been the wind shear. Most of the wind shear has been up across the northern Gulf Coast up here. And so down in this area here where the storm is, very calm wind shear overall. And so that has produced essentially like a Goldilocks zone for the storm down in this area to really explode.
Goldilocks zone for the storm, but a nightmare for people on the ground. Tampa Bay Times has video of the debris that's still in Tampa Bay area that still needs to get off the ground. So let's talk about the path. When will this make landfall, and what do people on the ground in Florida need to know?
Yeah, so we're forecasting the storm to remain a Category 5 through tonight. It actually may start to undergo what we call an eye wall replacement cycle, where an outer eye wall will essentially form in the storm, and then it will essentially contract and choke off the inner eye wall. Now, while that process occurs, the storm can lose a bit of wind intensity. So at some point, maybe tonight or tomorrow morning, we may actually see the storm back off a little bit, lose some wind intensity while this process takes place. It's completely normal in very strong tropical cyclones. But what can happen is, even though the winds come down temporarily, the wind field can expand. And so right now the storm is pretty small. It's maybe average size, maybe a little smaller than average size for a hurricane, much smaller than Helene. But what can happen after these eye wall replacement cycles is the storm can grow. They can grow in size and the wind field can expand. And then shortly after, the winds have the ability to come back up. So small fluctuations in intensity are possible here as the storm is moving. But overall, we expect it to remain a very powerful storm, probably still a Category 4 on Wednesday. And then we're anticipating a strong Category 3 moving in just south of the Tampa Bay area Wednesday around 8 p.m.
Wednesday around 8 p.m. And then when does it clear Florida entirely? When is the state out of the woods?
Yeah, it won't take too long for the storm to move across the peninsula of Florida. So by Thursday morning, it may actually be out back across the Atlantic Ocean. But nevertheless, it does look like all those impacts will come swinging across the peninsula very quickly. We can see very powerful winds, even on the east coast of Florida. We saw that with Ian that moved in down here across southwestern Florida. There was even winds, even way up in Daytona Beach, far away, that still gusted to near hurricane strength. So, even if you're on the east coast of Florida, up here, don't let your guard down. The winds are still going to be very powerful, as well as very heavy rain as well in those areas.
You talk about heavy rain, you talk about wind. What concerns you the most about this storm?
Yeah, we'll walk through the different impacts here. So the rain is going to be a pretty significant aspect of this storm. 8 to 12 inches, you can see here in the very, very dark green, widespread Cape Coral, Tampa, Orlando, up to Daytona Beach. So we're expecting to see widespread flooding across most of the panhandle, or most of the peninsula of Florida there. The winds, very windy here, especially right at the coast where the storm is making landfall. That's where we can see those winds 100, 120, 130 miles per hour. And if the storm is able to move ashore even stronger, potentially as a Cat 4, the winds could even be a little bit stronger than that. But you can see how big, look how the wind field kind of looks like almost like a cone. That's because we're anticipating the wind field to expand. Remember how I talked about that eye wall replacement cycle? You can see how down here the storm is fairly compact. But over the course of the next few days, expect that wind field to grow immensely and cover most of the Florida peninsula here. I don't think it'll be quite as big as Helene, but it does look like it's going to be growing in size. But the thing that really, really concerns me is going to be the storm surge. We'll kind of take a look, kind of out and then work our way in. But you can see most of Florida, and even on the Atlantic side, we can see 1 to 3 feet, even 3 to 6 feet here, southern Georgia, northern Florida there. But where I'm really concerned, it's going to be the Tampa Bay area and just south of there. So it's going to depend where the storm comes in. Right now, we're forecasting the storm to move in just south of the Tampa Bay area. And this is the area right here in red. We have it highlighted here. 15 to 20 feet of storm surge expected there. So that's Sarasota right there. That is what we're very concerned about. And again, that is above normally dry land. So just figure you're at the beach, you stick your toes in the water, 15 to 20 feet above that, and then kind of straight inland. That's the kind of flooding we're expecting. And even in Tampa Bay, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge into Tampa Bay, extending all the way down to Fort Myers. And small variations in the track can make all the difference here. If the storm, worst case scenario for Tampa would be a storm to move up towards maybe like the St. Petersburg area. So in like this would be the worst case scenario for the Tampa Bay area because all the water is going to be shoved into Tampa Bay. If the track verifies like that, we would have to take up Tampa Bay likely into that 15 to 20 foot storm surge. That is why there's mandatory evacuations in a lot of these areas, because we're expecting the storm surge potentially in some areas to be catastrophic.
There are already mandatory evacuations in the area. People have already left?
I sure hope so. Like I said, mandatory evacuations, especially for these barrier islands down here, those people, they absolutely need to get out, especially if the emergency officials are telling them to do so. The barrier islands have been significantly weakened by Helene that went through earlier. A lot of the dunes have been reduced. A lot of the kind of the natural protection that those barrier islands offer has been significantly reduced due to Helene. And so now with this storm coming in, it's not going to take as much to cause a lot of damage. So that is why a lot of the mandatory evacuations actually started yesterday. And so the emergency management officials were way on top of that, making sure people had plenty of time to get out safely. So certainly we urge people to listen to those evacuation orders.
As you talk about recovering from Helene and the land barriers or the sand barriers that are decimated, how common is it to have such strong back-to-back storms? It's hardly been a week. It feels immensely close together. Is this common?
Yeah, this is not common to see something like this. We have seen instances of multiple hurricanes making landfall in close proximity to each other within a few weeks, but the two major hurricanes would be pretty rare, and especially a storm moving in this direction. We don't see too many storms moving from the Bay of Campeche to western Florida. Normally, the storm track from this location, normally it's to the west or kind of up towards the northern Gulf Coast. A track, almost due east or east-northeast, it is pretty uncommon.
I was going to say, I saw a report earlier that said there are only 4 major storms over the course of modern history that have gone in that. We have to fact check that, but that direction does seem different. What is accounting for it going due east versus curving upwards to the Gulf?
Well, one thing, this is October. Typically, we don't see storms taking more of a track into Texas during the month of October. Usually, we start to see more cold fronts or more dips in the jet stream coming down into the United States. And so that's why during the month of October, we typically see storms hooking, more like this. during the month of October, or up the coast or out to sea, having kind of more of a hook because they're interacting with a dip in the jet stream. And so that's what's kind of happening here. Although the jet stream isn't exceptionally strong to really pull a storm all the way up, it's a little bit weaker, and so it allows it to kind of meander along a little bit longer. And so that's why it's kind of a more gradual turn to the north.
Well, in that case, it's good news for North Carolina, which is still recovering even more so than Florida is. And to that point, I know there's been a lot of disinformation and misinformation on the internet about these storms. And I don't want to repeat the false claims, but Alex, speak to the Forbes audience. What is something they should know? What is a piece of misinformation you have had to clarify over the last few days? What is a fact that you need to share about how these storms are forming and where they're going?
Yeah, I mean, Florida is a common place to see hurricanes. There's nothing, exceptionally unusual about seeing a hurricane in Florida. What we have seen over the past couple of years, and I think there is a tie to climate change when it comes to rapid intensification. We went over this a little bit at the beginning with the warm sea surface temperatures. This is the warmest we've ever seen the Gulf of Mexico at the beginning of October on record. So that is something that we have seen change in the last 30, 40, 50 years, as we've seen more heat, more energy, more ocean heat content in the Gulf of Mexico, Western Caribbean, and off the southeast coast. And so over the last couple of years, we've seen more storms undergo this rapid intensification. And so I think that's something that, some people might not be accustomed to. We've always seen rapidly intensifying cyclones, but it has seemed like we've seen a greater trend in these over the last couple of years. And the science backs that up, that we've seen more instances of this rapid intensification, likely due to the, essentially this is like a heat engine, it's like rocket fuel for these storms. And so that's why I think we're seeing so many storms more recently undergo this more rapid intensification. And so I think as we look to the future, I think this could be more commonplace with seeing more storms rapidly intensify.
Is there anything else the Forbes audience should know about this storm or that you have your eye on at this point in time?
Yeah, we're just going to have to watch these, what we call eye wall replacement cycles. That's kind of the big caveat here in the forecast. We still expect a major hurricane to make landfall across western Florida here, but there can be fluctuations in strength here over the next couple of days. If an eye wall replacement cycle happens, like I said, the storm is likely to lose some wind intensity for a time. Usually these cycles can last anywhere between 6 to 12 hours. This storm is a little bit smaller, so it might be closer to the 6 than the 12, but you can see a temporary reduction in the wind speed, but then the wind field is going to expand as that eye wall replacement cycle kind of finishes up. But then you can see the winds come back up. So we might see kind of this seesaw, action where the storm going up, going down, going up, going down. But overall, this is the general flavor, Category 5 here for the next day or so, or next 12 to 24 hours. And then remember, we talked about a little bit of the wind shear. Right now, it's not, in an area of really high wind shear, but to the north, there still is quite a bit of wind shear up in this area here. So as the storm gains latitude, moves to the north, it is going to encounter a little bit more wind shear. So I don't anticipate the storm to be as strong as it is right now once it makes landfall. We are likely to see a little bit of a reduction in the wind speed, but I will caution people, the storm is a Category 5 right now. It is generating the energy and the power into the ocean of the Category 5 strength, and Category 4, probably on Wednesday. So even if the storm makes landfall as a Category 3, it is still going to have the power of that 4 to 5, that Category 4 to 5 in terms of surge, because that water has been built up. It's already been pushed. And so even if it loses a little wind intensity, that water is still coming. That energy, it takes a while for that energy to be dispersed. And so it's not just going to drop right away with the, a reduction in the wind. So that's the concern I have, is that even if we see a Category 3 make landfall in and around the Tampa Bay area, the surge is going to be much more like a Cat 4, if not even a Category 5.
That's a really important point. Alex DaSilva, lead hurricane expert at AccuWeather. Thank you so much, as always, for sharing your insights with our audience. We so appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.